Hello and welcome to Contractors that Want to Be Developers. So this is just a little chat between me and Dave Symondson, who is a broker and has been in the industry for a long, long time and really understands development finance. And I'm Robin Hayhurst. I'm a developer and I've been in the industry for a long, long time and I understand development. So between the two of us, I think we can answer most questions. So we just thought we'd have a natter and see how the day went, really. So hello and welcome.
Thank you very much, Robin. Thank you very much.
So tell us a bit about you, because you're one of the few people I know in development finance is a member of the Chartered Institute Building.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it came about. I previously worked for a couple of lenders that basically put equity into transactions. So I've overseen sort of 50 plus development projects. More often than not, my name was director on the SPV as well. And obviously, as we know, developing has challenges at time and obstacles to overcome. And it was after about 4 or 5 years that I really inquired with somebody that was MCIOB and what is the qualification, what does it mean? And he explained, so I'd like to do something like that. And he said, no, you'd be absolutely fine. You'd fly for it. So basically during lockdown, I decided to do an MVQ7 in senior construction management, jumping through the various hoops there. There were some fixed modules and some options to choose 4 out of 8 additional modules. But it worked out as a total of 8 modules. And I completed the MVQ7 using an assessor, which enabled me to get the MVQ7 in senior construction management. And then I did quite a simple bridge paper to basically become a member of the MCIOB. But I mean, I funded various different developers, whether they be contractors or developers, and I guess my interest in understanding more of the build side of it was always something that I was always interested to learn. And I guess when I'm working for the funding side, dealing with contractor developers, I could communicate with them on a level and ask prudent questions around the construction methodology and how they're procuring it, etc. But at the end of the day, knowledge is key. The more you know, we're learning every day, and hopefully it helps me to add value back to my clients doing what I'm doing now.
It must, most certainly, I would have thought. Yeah, I mean, talking about developers, lots of developers out there that I see, they have the model of quite a hands-off approach. They buy the land, get the plan permission, and then they get a contractor in to build it.
Yeah.
I really think that people with contracting experience have a huge advantage because there is money to be made in the contracting as well as the development.
Yeah.
And you can actually even, I think you can confirm this, you can charge profit as part of the finance if you've got your own contracting company. So, there is a better way forward if you do that and you understand the build and you understand the product better, I think. So lots of developers go down the hands-off route. My model was always that we did have our own ground workers because it was easy to kind of get in and labour in and all the other bits and pieces we needed doing. But the rest was subcontract, and then we had a site manager on site. And in the early days, that was me. So, it's really understood the build, understood the problems, and could get over problems. When you're hands off and there's a problem, it can become very expensive because the contractor wants to make a profit out of it. You're not sure about the solution, and you're not sure if you're going down the right road, and you really are in the hands of a good contractor. And there is a lack of good contractors.
Yeah. I think when I've historically looked at it and met a number of contractors since I've been doing what I've been doing now, obviously many of them are taking the construction risk. The margins are quite skinny, and also they're chasing their turnover because they need the volume to keep the wheels turning. I think it's a natural transition to go from a contractor to a developer. I mean, you mentioned about allocating part of the profit. Obviously, you can charge a development management fee for seeing it. So you wouldn't necessarily have your full contractor margin built in because it would depend on the overall financial metrics of the project. but certainly, if you're used to earning sort of 1.5 to 3.5, pre-tax on turnover, which most contractors are, obviously you're going to get the benefit of the full developer's margin, which, if you're doing it well, should be 20% and up. And even if you don't do so badly, it shouldn't certainly fall below 10%. So you're filling your turnover hopper whilst increasing your margin as a business. So you're getting more control of your business. So to me, it's a natural evolution.
Yes, and I want to be clear about this. I'm a great advocate of people doing both contracting and development. So many people that I come across kind of go, oh, we're fed up with clients. I understand that, but often every kind of situation that I've got involved in, there's been quite a large element of not blame, but of mistakes made by the contractor to fall out of clients. I'm not saying clients are perfect. I've come across clients that are just awful to work with. But trying to get away from clients by doing development isn't going to work, because you still have people that buy houses. They still want variations. You still have to pander to them, and you've got a 2-year relationship with them due to the defects and other bits and pieces. So, but if you're a contractor and a developer, the benefit to you is that you have cash flow from contracting, whereas development is money out, money out, money out. It keeps your pencil sharp. So you should be able to, if someone's using a contractor, purely a contractor for their development, you should be able to undercut them when you come to buy the land. So there's lots of benefits in doing that. So if you're a contractor want to be in development at the moment and you're struggling as a contractor, just hold fire and actually get the contracting bit working first, and then start doing a few development sites.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would. At the end of the day, you're not, or it's unlikely that you're going to be in a position where you can go from full-fledged contractor to full-fledged contractor developer anyway. It's a stepping stone. And at the end of the day, it depends on what your model is and over what period of time it is. But I think the reality is that most people will add development to the string to their bow rather than completely go from one to the other. And as you say, depending on your infrastructure costs, you may need a certain amount of turnover to keep everybody, engaged and employed. So it'll be a gradual thing. As you said, development, there are costs associated to it that you perhaps wouldn't have otherwise. And it takes a long while to realise that money back, depending on the development cycle, which is normally 18 to 24 months. So I think, a combination of both, makes sense. And then, like all businesses, you will evolve over time. And whether that ends up meaning that you continue to have a blend between contracting and contractor developing, or becoming a full-time contractor developer, well, that's the decision you make as you evolve.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And so, lots of people approach me about development. I don't tend to go out there and go, look, I teach people development, because I suppose it's the property investment world that, to me, seems so not alien, because I've been in it for a long time, but misleading. I think it's misleading, and I'll state that there are people out there, I'm not going to name anyone, but they're kind of making it look easier than it is, and they're talking about big wins. And some of those kind of techniques are slightly morally bankrupt as far as I'm concerned. So getting in the middle of a deal and charging, a rate to the seller and then charge a much higher rate to the buyer, when there's kind of big margin. I mean, estate agents do that in some ways, but they kind of, what their percentage is before you start. I think it's a bit wrong. So development isn't what people always think it is, and there's a lot to it. So it's not something you can just dabble at. And the other thing about development, as I see it, is that you don't get a second chance often. If you make a mistake and you've heavily invested in something and you've got your figures wrong, or you've got your build wrong, or you've got the product wrong, or you've got the location wrong, or, and there's loads of other things, you might not come back from that. So important to get things right first time. Have you seen, Dave, any really kind of striking mistakes made by people that have really kind of ended it for them?
Oh, many. Yeah, many. I think it's like everything, and I don't know why property development is considered any different to any other business, but it's like anything. You can't run before you walk, irrespective of your experience and how long you've been doing contracting for. Um, you need to do it as a steady progression for where you are in the business. I mean, I've got 37 years of doing property funding, with the lender side and our broker side. But, as what I'm doing now, I've been doing it 20 months. So I haven't gone in with the intention of all of a sudden doing the biggest projects known to man. It takes time to build up credibility and pipeline. So it needs to feel very, very comfortable at the time you're making that decision. So earlier I was speaking to somebody that had previously been a project manager and wants to look at doing property development. So I was saying to him that the first thing, property development obviously in some cases involves buying a property, doing it up and selling it. It's as simple as that. And then you may go on to, a bigger, say, HMO fit out, and then a PDR, and then 20, 30, 40, 50 units ground up. I think the first one is always making sure that you're doing it right, you're comfortable, and you're within, you're not stretching yourself too far. And then you learn from that, because there's a big difference between being a contractor and also doing the development aspects and having the responsibility for everything that goes with that. So I think, like everything in life, in any business, depending where you are, you need to do what's right for the business at that time. So to go from, a contractor to doing a big development, that's not something I would advise about. It's small steps. And, when you do development, obviously there's an element of capital that's required to put into it. And it will depend on how much capital you do and don't have. Will also depend on maybe what project you do. But I think the important thing is you've got to start somewhere. So start a place where you feel really, really comfortable, and then build your confidence, build your systems and processes. And then over time, you scale it from there.
I totally agree with that. I think it's about steps. But again, there are things that I see people start out in development who just get it wrong. So if you go out there and you bid on single plots with planning permission, all ready to go, the chances you make any money are pretty slim. Now, the reason for that is because there's other contractors and developers trying to bid on those sites, but also there's self-builders who don't need to make a profit in 24 months. They just want to live there. It's very difficult to outbid them. There are single plots available, but perhaps you've got to think about another approach. And there are other approaches that will give you maybe a little bit of risk, kind of maybe the risk of kind of £4,000, £5,000, £6,000, but will give you a better end price on the land and give you a better outcome, because you can actually design something from scratch. So there's loads of different approaches to development, and people tend to have this set thing, and I also see, we're talking about starting out just doing a house up. It's great. You've got to allow for things like VAT, which people forget about. But I also see a lot of people, Dave, I don't know if you do, that have done 2 or 3 what are called house flips, and they're suddenly developers, and they're out there teaching other people how to do it.
Yeah. I think, there is. I mean, you alluded to it earlier. At the end of the day, there are, many people out there that are educating themselves to become so-called property developers. But it's like everything, it's surrounding yourself with best-in-class professionals, whether that be the people teaching you, whether it be the best architects, but the quality and the credibility of the people that you're surrounding yourself with has got to put you way ahead in terms of where you need to be. So as an example, if you're learning about ground up development, you want to learn from somebody that's done multiple units and bigger schemes. Sometimes people approach me for funding, and it's one of the things I suggest. If they're stepping outside their comfort zone, sometimes it might be financially led as well. But I say, you've got the experience of doing this, but how about teaming up with another developer that's further ahead in your journey, that can share that burden? You can learn and gain experience that way. So it's just, everyone needs to do their own DD on everything they do in property development. You need to take your time, but surrounding yourself with the right people is one of the most important bits of advice that I think that I could give based on what I've seen before.
Having the right team around you is absolutely paramount. You need a really good solicitor. Most of them out there aren't good. I'm sorry, solicitors, but you let yourself down really. But they just don't work to a time frame. They don't do the job properly. They don't kind of read the room. So they will stop a deal for something where the risk is a few £1,000s.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
you can look at that risk and go, I can quantify that. I know what that is. So, solicitors, you've got accountants that are kind of, you've got around you that can help you with making sure that the money goes right. And, maybe a really good freelance FD, because when you get to people like Dave, you want to have your figures all in a row and, and have a kind of some kind of track record, even if it's just in contracting. So having the right team around you is really, really important. Architects, planners, planning consultants are so important. And some planning consultants, they'll take your money whether they're going to get you planning or not. They're just interested. Well, okay, if you want us to have a go, we'll have a go. Thank you. That'll be 10 grand. But a really good planning consultant will go, no, the chance you get in that past are that slim. It's not worth doing. That's what kind of advice you want. Yeah. And I think that's so. The professional team is really, really important. I think people don't get that either. And remember, you've got to have the money to pay that team.
Yeah.
So all this kind of rubbish out there about, getting involved in property investment and property development with none of your own money. It might not be your own money, but you're borrowing it from someone, and you will have to put some kind of collateral behind that. So really, you need some money to put into a deal. Now, you don't need as much as people think. There are different ways of structuring deals. There's great joint ventures opportunities. There's ways of tiering joint ventures with land. I always look for, in a land deal, a win-win situation. Have you got any examples of those, Dave, that you've done, kind of that have been a real kind of win-win? And
I think, and also sort of that sort of backs up something you said a couple of moments ago about properties that are on the market, and generally speaking, there are lots of people chasing those deals. Generally speaking, the margins on those projects are normally very, very tight, and obviously one of the biggest challenges when you're buying on market is that you've got the landowner that wants their money yesterday. You've got planning drawings at best. You haven't got your detailed drawings, so therefore you can't procure accurately. So it becomes a very much a very accurate finger in the air, which as you get maturity as a developer, your data becomes more important and you get some track record, then it can become easier to predict costs. But when you're starting out, you literally don't know, because you don't know what your contractor's proposals are. You don't know the details around the individual scheme. They might not be particular house types that you would normally use because the planning is already done. So you've got lots of challenges on that. I mean, the best, going back to your original question, is that yes, I have. I mean, obviously, those developers that are further along in the journey generally will build value via uplifted planning. So they'll be doing an option or maybe a conditional exchange, going through the planning process. And obviously, depending on how long that takes, which in recent years has been far too long, planning does take longer than it should do. If you've negotiated well for the land, you should be able to build some what I call soft equity into the transaction, which, although there will normally always still be a requirement for some cash from the borrower, it will mitigate the amount they have to put in, because soft equity, depending on obviously the level it's at, will potentially add value to from a lending point of view, and therefore you'll be able to get the benefit of it. So I've got a couple of developers where they go through that process, and one that I'm working on at the moment, literally the land value has doubled off the back of what the option purchase is going to be, because of the work they put into it. But they've spent circa 150k in costs, and with the planning consultants, legals, and council fees, etc. And they invested 3 years of their life. So they've had to work very hard to build up that substantial equity in that particular deal. But So yeah, so it does exist, and the more mature developers, that's what they do. And many of those that, particularly in the last few years, that are really put off by maybe developing out themselves, are building the value in the land, and obviously then selling it to contractors or other developers, and making a margin out of it that way. It depends, because you can do development by just doing the planning gain or building it all out, each to their own. But yeah, there are good examples of it, but they're probably the best ones, the ones that have spent the time, spent the effort doing it. But the key is the negotiation on what you paid for that option on the land. That is always, that's the most important bit, really, because if you get that wrong, the deal doesn't work. The rest is going to be challenging enough on its own. But if you buy wrong, one, you potentially wouldn't be able to get it funded anyway. But even if you can, you've got to get everything going in your favour for you to realise that profit. So there's so many different aspects and moving parts to it, and it's very important to mitigate all the risks, get the right professional team involved, and literally systematically work through the different risks at the various stages. But the planning bit is the best bit, but you've got more time. You can go into design drawings before you even secure the funding, depending on the length of the option, and you can procure tightly. So when you go to funding lines, you know that the build costs are accurate, whereas those buying on the market don't have that luxury. So there's an element of, best intentions, or, this is what we think is best to the information. We know that the build costs are going to be this level.
I think there's so many points that you've raised. We could go on for hours, but I'm going to kind of cover some of them. And I think, but one of the things I kind of suddenly realised while you're in full flight was that some of the language you're using and some of the language I might be using is a little bit, might be alien to people that aren't in development.
I'm guilty of
So, soft equity, etc., and other bits and pieces. So this is going to go out on YouTube. So if anyone is listening to this or watching this and they want to know any more, just put a comment. Just comment underneath, and we'll try and answer the questions, because there is so much to this. I often get told as a business coach, don't give all your secrets away. It's taken me 40 years to learn what I learned. If I can give it away in an hour's YouTube video, then good luck to you if you're watching. You've done really well. So that was one of the things. I think the other thing is, obviously this is aimed at contractors who want to be developers. It's obviously relevant to other people that want to go into development, but it's aimed at contractors. Contractors have a benefit. Now, if you go back through your last 10 contracts and work out what the square footage price to build them was, you've already got lots of the information you need for development.
Yeah.
You've already got it. And you know what it costs you to build, not the profit and what you manage to get off the client, but what it costs you to build. So in some ways, you've got that data.
Yeah.
You've just got to go through and do it. And if you're into new builds and, whole house builds, then you've got even better data. So it's really important to use that data, because you haven't got the luxury of working drawings normally.
Yeah.
So, people don't know how we price as developers a site without plan permission. But it's all to do with having that data.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And sorting that out. And there's other bits and pieces to development. I've spoken to people who've been on to development courses, that have been with mentors on development, and they kind of talk about parts of development, but there's things like the legal side of it. So you've got case law. Case law is really important development. There's a very important case, I won't go into here, but it's called Stokes versus Cambridge. And it's about access. It's about access land. So if you understand that, you can add huge value to a site that you then expand.
Yeah.
And that's where the super profits come from.
Yeah.
And if you've been on a development course for 3 or 4 days and no one's mentioned that, that's kind of like you're missing the point. You've got to add value. You've got to find a way forward with each site to make sure you can do it. And then you've got to get someone like Dave to come along and help you and, hold your hand through the process of getting funding, because banks aren't builders. Some of them don't understand them. And often the broker does a very important job, which is translating what you're saying to the bank and then translating what the bank is saying to you. Yeah. And they are very, very valuable. So how is lending at the moment? What's how's it feel out there?
There's definitely more activity now than there has been. Last year, I think for anybody involved in property, whatever side you fence was incredibly challenging. There's definitely more activity, and certainly more activity in the last week. But I would still say that there is a large element of caution. People, lenders, and everybody associated within that due diligence chain, whether it be valuers, solicitors, and QSs, are really being overly thorough in ensuring that they're making the right decisions. And sometimes it is not sometimes, in many cases, it is taking far longer than whether it should or whether ideally people would want is a different matter. But it's definitely more active. I think some people are holding out till the autumn statement to find out what's going to happen, what the government are going to give us their proposed plan. I think a lot of people may have guessed what it's going to be anyway, but until we're actually told, who knows? But I think also the other thing is that the problems over the last 4 years have been very different at different stages. So, through COVID, we had, most sites were operational, but you had building material issues and you had massive cost increases. That sort of went on for about a 2-year period, started to get a little bit of stability there. And then we've had all the interest rates since. So I think we've been hit with a lot of challenges. Obviously, selling properties really has slowed down considerably whilst interest rates were going up. I think now exits and sales are better than they have been, but I still see massive variations depending on the microeconomics of each area and depending what the asset type is, depending where it is geographically located. Where I live, activity at a certain price point is very good. So, generally speaking, anything below 500,000 is very active and selling well. But then as you go up,
That's because you live near the seaside.
yeah, well, that's true. Anything
So,
above of 500,000 is taking a lot longer.
yeah,
So I see different pockets.
yeah, I've seen that effect in Brighton because I've got a client down there. So yeah, I totally get it. I think I look at the housing market a bit like a feather, really easy for a little draft or a little wind to blow it off course.
Yeah,
Often it's then that you make money.
yeah,
So it's trying to predict what's going to happen and having some confidence, but also not borrowing money that you are going to be under pressure to pay back too early. Having different exit strategies really important from a job
yeah,
because it's a strange market. Often rental values go up when property prices come down. There's loads of reasons for that, but it's often a thing. We don't know what effect the government's going to have on the market at the moment. They are pro building houses, but I think they're also very pro building council houses.
yeah,
But even council houses and housing association has there's still a win for a developer. So if you can get yourself an intro into some land, you'll be surprised what you can do with it with the backing of a housing association. So even that kind of stuff is development and there's profit in it. It's
yeah,
trying to work out what you can do. And at the end of the day, if you do that kind of thing, the risk to you is so small.
yeah,
So, and it's also pretty secure in any market. So there's loads of different ways to do development and you don't know what you don't know. So the exciting news is that me and Dave have got together and we are doing a workshop just for contractors. It's a 1-day workshop. It's on the 11th of October and we're going to be looking for contractors to come along and really kind of see if development's for them. So we can have a chat to you. We'll go through some of the basics, some of the mistakes I've made, and get you kind of pointed in the right direction. Now, I'll be honest, I can't kind of teach you all about development in 1 day. It's taken me 30, 40 years to understand what I understand. And in some areas, I am no expert. In some areas, I am. But I think it's been a great day. It's in Hitchin, which is in Hertfordshire. It's a great location, and me and Dave will make it as fun as possible. And Dave has actually been kind of involved in this kind of prior to me, in the fact he's running the course for the Chartered Institute Building. So,
Yeah,
Dave, tell us about your course.
yeah, that's the property development and funding, which I'm running again a one day workshop on that. Again, attracting in the main, I would expect contractors, but no doubt there'll be other professionals that or developers that will be registered for it. But that's next week, so we shall see then. So
Yeah,
it's all good. I think as you've alluded to, there is just so much to learn, but I think that the most important thing is to give you a roadmap of how you can get there, and just basically mitigate as many of the risks as possible. And you don't know what you don't know,
absolutely.
so just
And there'll be an
learning.
opportunity after to work with us in some way, some form or another. We haven't
Yeah,
worked that one out yet, but we just wanted to get some people along and see what the uptake was, and see who was interested in learning more. And we'll make it fun. So it won't be, but you'll be doing the work. By the way, that's what a workshop is. Love it when you do the work. So that's really good. So Dave, great to join me. Great of you to join me. Sorry. God,
thank
there's
you. No, it's been good to be here.
we've had a good chat, and we'll do another one of these,
Yeah,
and we'll talk in more detail, and maybe we'll go a little bit into the terminology and everything else. So we'll do another one between now and the workshop, and see how it goes.
wonderful, good, nice to see you.
Okay.